Top 5 Strangest 911 Calls in History, Part 1. They begged for help, their voices trembling, and then the line went dead. In moments of fear, when hope is slipping away, some people manage to dial 911. Some are saved. Some are never heard from again. But a few calls still haunt us, not because of what was said, but because of what came after. 5. The woman who ordered a pizza to stay alive. "I'd like to order a pizza, large." Those were the first words the dispatcher heard. Routine at a pizza parlor, completely out of place in a 911 call center. The dispatcher paused, confused. "Ma'am, this is 911. You've reached emergency services." He replied, expecting the caller to apologize and hang up. But she didn't. Instead, there was a pause just long enough to feel unnatural. Then she responded, steady and calm. "Yes, I know. Please send it to the usual address." That's when something clicked. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Her voice trembled, but her words were rehearsed, almost robotic. She was trying to tell him something, without actually saying it. The dispatcher's tone shifted. He knew this game. He'd heard stories of victims using coded language to escape dangerous situations. He asked slowly, "Is someone there with you?" The woman didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Are you unable to speak freely?" Another quick reply, "Yes." It was all the confirmation he needed. This wasn't a prank. This was a woman trying to survive. Behind her calm, scripted voice was a mind racing with fear. Her boyfriend, violent, paranoid, unpredictable, was right there, watching her. Any sign of resistance, any wrong word, might set him off. He was the kind of man who didn't need much of a reason. But she'd heard once, long ago, about a woman who used a fake pizza order to get help. She remembered. And now, it was her turn. She dialed 911, knowing full well what she was doing. To him, it looked harmless, just ordering food. But to the dispatcher, it was a silent scream. As the woman kept speaking in code, the dispatcher kept her on the line while signaling to a colleague. A silent alarm was triggered. Officers were dispatched immediately, sirens off. The woman described her pizza order in vague but deliberate terms: large, half pepperoni, extra cheese, each word carefully chosen to buy her time, to keep him from noticing the tremor in her voice. Meanwhile, the dispatcher pulled up her location. The address matched the home of a woman who had previously reported domestic disturbances, but had never followed through with charges. That told him even more. This wasn't a one-time situation. This was a cycle, one she had probably tried to escape before, and failed. He asked, "Do you need medical assistance?" She replied, "Yes. Make sure it's hot when it gets here." Code confirmed. She was hurt. On the other end of the line, her boyfriend stood nearby, watching her, listening. Not closely enough, she hoped. He thought she was ordering food. He even muttered something under his breath, like, "Don't forget the bread." She laughed nervously and repeated it into the phone. The dispatcher noted everything. Every detail. Every second counted. 3 police units were already en route. They knew they had to be quiet, fast, coordinated. One officer would go to the front door, another would circle to the back. A third stood by in case the man inside turned violent. Inside the house, she tried to keep him calm. "It'll be about 20 minutes, she said, glancing at the clock. But every second felt like a lifetime. And then there was a knock. Not loud, just enough. He frowned. That was fast. She shrugged, trying to act casual. Guess they weren't busy. He opened the door and was met with silence. No delivery guy. No pizza. Just two officers in uniform, guns drawn. Sir, step outside. We need to speak with you. He froze, tried to slam the door, but it was too late. The officers were already moving. Inside, she was shaking. The moment he turned his back, she ran straight into the arms of the third officer waiting in the hallway. She collapsed in sobs. He was arrested on the spot. Inside the house, officers found signs of long-term abuse, bruises, broken furniture, and a hidden phone she had used to call for help. The dispatcher, still on the line, heard her whisper, "Thank you." It was faint, barely audible, but he heard it, and it stayed with him forever. The case made headlines. The 911 call, once released, went viral. People were shocked, amazed, inspired, but for her, it wasn't about going viral. It was about surviving. She had used the only tool she had, her voice. Not to scream, but to speak calmly, carefully, in code. A fake pizza order, a fake smile, a desperate act of courage disguised as something ordinary. In the days that followed, people began to ask, how many other women are out there, waiting for the right moment? How many people live with danger right beside them, unable to say it out loud? It wasn't the most dramatic 911 call in history. No screams, no explosions, no chaos, just a quiet voice, a careful choice of words, and a dispatcher who listened closely enough to hear the fear behind the calm. That's what saved her life. A pizza that never arrived. A code that worked. A silence that finally spoke volumes. 4. Brandon Swanson, Osh *T. Dad, I drove into a ditch. I'm walking toward the lights of town. I think I'm almost there. Those were the words Brandon Swanson said the night he vanished. Just 19 years old, intelligent, responsible, and deeply close to his family. It was supposed to be a typical night, celebrating the end of the college semester with friends, but it ended in one of the most chilling, unsolved disappearances in recent American history. It was May 14, 2008, after leaving a party. In Canby, Minnesota, Brandon was driving home to the small town of Marshall. Sometime after midnight, he accidentally veered off a gravel road, landing his car in a shallow ditch. The car wasn't damaged. He wasn't injured. He just couldn't drive it out. So, like anyone might, he picked up his phone and called the one person he trusted the most, his dad. "Can you come get me?" Of course, his father, Brandon Swanson, got dressed and immediately headed out. Brandon told him he was near Lind, a small town just outside of Marshall. He sounded calm, clear-headed, not panicked at all. While his parents drove, Brandon stayed on the phone. They talked about where he might be. They flashed their headlights, hoping he'd see them. He did the same, but something didn't add up. Brandon said he could see lights, what he believed to be the town of Lind, and that he was walking toward them. "I'm cutting across a field," he told his father. "I'll meet you at the edge of town." The phone stayed connected for over 47 minutes. Through tall grass, fields, and gravel roads, Brandon kept walking. His voice never betrayed fear, just a quiet determination. A young man trying to make it home. Then suddenly, after nearly an hour of walking and talking, he interrupted the conversation with two chilling words. T. And then nothing. No thud, no scream, no struggle. The call went silent. The line remained connected for several moments, long enough for his father to realize something was terribly wrong. He shouted Brandon's name again and again, but there was no response. He hung up and tried calling back. No answer. Again and again. Straight to voicemail. The police were notified immediately, but the initial response was underwhelming. Brandon was 19, an adult. They assumed he'd gone off on his own, maybe sleeping it off somewhere, or walking to a friend's house. His parents knew better. They retraced his steps, using his phone records to triangulate his location. And here's where it gets disturbing. Brandon had told them he was near Lind, but the phone records showed he was almost 25 miles away, near a town called Porter. He wasn't walking towards safety, he was walking deeper into isolation. Search teams eventually found his abandoned car, just where the GPS said it would be. But it was nowhere near Lind. The terrain was rural. Open fields, streams, thick grass. They brought in dogs, helicopters, divers, dozens of volunteers. The dogs picked up a trail from the car, through a field, to a riverbank. Then, nothing. As if he had vanished into the air. They even drained part of the Yellow Medicine River, thinking he might have fallen in. But no body was ever found. No clothes, no phone, no trace. So what happened in that moment? What caused Brandon mid-sentence to suddenly blurt out, T, and go silent? Some believe he fell into a ravine or the river, but the terrain was walked and re-walked. If he had drowned, something should have surfaced. Others believe he was attacked by an animal or a person, but there were no signs of a struggle. No blood, no dragged footprints, nothing. Then there are stranger theories. That he was picked up by someone. That he stumbled onto something or someone he shouldn't have seen. That the lights he was walking toward weren't a town, but something else entirely. It's important to remember, Brandon had perfect vision. He wasn't drunk, just mildly buzzed. He knew the area, but somehow he ended up far from where he thought he was. Some say he got disoriented. Others suggest something more sinister, that he was deliberately misled, or that what he saw wasn't what it seemed. Even now, over 15 years later, no one has seen or heard from Brandon Swanson again. But there's one detail that continues to haunt those who've studied the case. The call never dropped. The phone didn't lose signal. He didn't say goodbye. He just stopped speaking, as if something reached out from the dark and took him in one breath. His parents still hope for answers. Every year, they hold a vigil. They've kept the same number, just in case he ever tries to call home. There are hundreds of 911 calls made every day. Some are dramatic, some are tragic, but few are as chilling as the one that ends with a whisper of fear, and then endless silence. Brandon Swanson's final words weren't a goodbye. They were a warning, a gasp, an unfinished sentence left hanging in the dark. Just 2 words, T. And after that, nothing. 3. Kenny Veach, the breathing in the desert. I found a cave shaped like an M. When I got close, my whole body vibrated. Those were the words Kenny Veach left behind. A thrill seeker, a hiker, a self-proclaimed explorer of the unknown. Kenny wasn't just another YouTuber chasing views. He was a man with a deep curiosity, drawn to the wildness of the Nevada desert like a moth to a flame. His channel, modest in subscribers but rich in strange tales, was filled with footage of abandoned places, desert treks, and theories that flirted with the paranormal. But none captured attention quite like the cave. It began with a comment, a stranger, claiming to have found a cave in the Mojave Desert that gave off an inexplicable energy. He said anyone who got too close would feel intense fear, like something was watching, like the cave itself was alive. Kenny, never one to back down from a challenge, decided to find it. And after several solo hikes, he claimed he had. In one video, he described it calmly but clearly, a cave in the shape of a perfect capital M, hidden in the jagged rocks. When he stepped toward it, he said a strange vibration overtook his entire body. His hands trembled. His chest throbbed. Fear, real and primal, kicked in. He ran. Viewers were instantly fascinated. Was it a hoax? A desert illusion? Or something stranger? The comments demanded answers. Kenny replied that he would go back. And this time, he said, he wouldn't stop at the entrance. He would go in. On November 10th, 2014, Kenny Veach set out once again. Alone, he packed lightly, took his video equipment, his gun for safety, and left behind a simple message. If I don't return, I loved you all. At first, no one panicked. Kenny had a history of disappearing into the desert for days at a time. But this time was different. Days passed. No videos, no messages, no sign. And then came the 911 call. It lasted only a few seconds. There were no words, just wind, dry, sharp desert wind and something else. Breathing, heavy, uneven, gasping, as if someone was running or hiding. And then, silence. By the time authorities traced it, the signal was gone. A search was launched. Hikers, helicopters, and rescue teams combed the harsh desert terrain near the Nellis Air Force Base. It was rough land, endless rock formations, deep shafts, and forgotten mines that had claimed lives before. They searched for days, and eventually they found something. Near an old, unused mine shaft, they discovered Kenny's cell phone. Next to it, his backpack. Nearby, his handgun. But no blood, no body, no footprints leading away. Just a phone left behind as if dropped in a hurry, or placed. The shaft was searched top to bottom. No sign of a fall. No clue to where he had gone. It was as if he'd stepped out of his own life, leaving behind only questions. Theories began to spiral. Some believed he found the cave again and entered. That it wasn't just a cave, but a portal or a military experiment, or something ancient and unknown. Others were more grounded. They said he fell, got lost, or was attacked by animals. But if so, where was his body? How could a man simply vanish with no trace, no scent, no struggle? Then there was the breathing. The 911 call, though short, was real. It was logged, recorded. A man's breathing, shallow and panicked, caught in the static of wind and dust. Was it Kenny, moments before something happened? Was he trying to speak? Or was something else holding the phone? Some viewers of his old videos claimed they could see strange shadows in the background, figures, blurry and distant, watching. Others fixated on the cave itself. No one has ever located it, even using Kenny's maps and landmarks. The M Cave, as it's now known online, remains a mystery. Some say it never existed, that Kenny imagined it, but those who knew him say otherwise. He wasn't the type to fake fear. He had faced wild animals, scorching heat, dangerous climbs without flinching. But in that video, when he talked about the cave, his eyes changed. He looked truly afraid, as if he had seen something out there that didn't want to be found. Over the years, amateur sleuths have retraced his steps. Hikers have tried to locate the cave using his footage, his GPS trails, his notes. Some claim to have found similar caves, but none matched the exact M shape. None gave off the vibration he spoke of. None made them run. And none explained the call. A call with no voice, just the desert breathing. Kenny's disappearance is now legend, part true crime, part ghost story, part urban myth. But for those who knew him, it's painfully real. His girlfriend spoke out later, saying Kenny was a deep thinker, sometimes troubled, but not suicidal. He loved adventure, loved pushing limits, but he always came back, until he didn't. There's a coldness to the Mojave. That has nothing to do with temperature. At night, it's too quiet, the kind of quiet that listens back. Kenny Veach walked into that quiet and never returned. He might have chased a myth, or maybe he found it. Whatever he saw in that cave, whatever he felt when his body vibrated, it was enough to make him turn and run the first time. But he came back, determined to face it. And whatever it was, this time it didn't let him go. To this day, no trace of Kenny has ever been found beyond that phone. That gun and that soft, haunted breathing echoing over a dead phone line. A call for help. A final message, or something else entirely. Out there in the Nevada wilderness, between the heat and the silence, a cave waits, shaped like an M, just beyond sight, just beyond reach, and maybe, just maybe, still breathing. 2. Latoya Ammons' demon in the house. Something is in my house. Please send someone. That was the call Latoya Ammons made in 2012 from her small home in Gary, Indiana. At first glance, it sounded like panic. Maybe a break-in, maybe mental stress. But what followed would become one of the most disturbing and heavily documented alleged cases of demonic possession in modern American history. What made it terrifying wasn't just what she claimed it was. Who else believed her? Latoya, a mother of 3, lived with her children and her mother, Rosa Campbell. For a while, things were normal, quiet, but slowly, everything changed. It started with strange noises, footsteps where there should be none, shadowy figures pacing the hall at night. Then came the infestation, massive black flies that appeared in the middle of winter, swarming the screened-in porch. They killed them again and again, but the flies came back. And then, the children changed. Her 12-year-old daughter would convulse, her eyes rolling back in her head, growling words that weren't hers. Her sons would scream without knowing why. One was found inside a closet, speaking in voices no child should know. And then came the event that would make this case infamous. During a visit from a child services worker, one of the boys, just 9 years old, walked backward up a wall. Not climbed, not leaned, walked backwards up the vertical surface. Witnessed by a nurse, a social worker, and a police officer. All 3 fled the room. The social worker later wrote that the boy's movement defied physics. The officer requested a transfer shortly after. The 911 call that Latoya made, included desperate descriptions. They're levitating. The furniture is moving. On the recording, investigators say you can hear breathing harsh, guttural sounds not matching anyone in the house. Whispers beneath her voice. One officer described hearing something on the tape he couldn't explain. Something that sounded like a growl, low and deliberate, coming from inside the walls. The house itself had a presence. Police who entered said their body cameras malfunctioned. Batteries drained instantly. One officer's radio cut to static the moment he crossed the threshold. In the basement, they found strange items. A pentagram drawn in oil beneath the stairs. A damp, blackened patch of dirt. A pair of children's socks buried. Rosa, the grandmother, said that's where it lived beneath the stairs, in the dark. The family fled more than once, staying in hotels or with relatives. But the phenomena followed them. A priest, Father Michael Magina, was called. At first, he was skeptical, but after one visit, he became convinced something evil was at work. He witnessed flickering lights, a shadow slithering across the floor. He said he felt a pressure in the house, like something watching, something waiting. He received permission to perform an exorcism, not once, but 3 separate times. During one session, Latoya's body convulsed. Her voice changed. She spoke in languages she didn't know. One child was thrown across the room. The priest said that each session left him drained, cold to the bone, as if the air had been pulled out of the room. The Department of Child Services temporarily removed the children. Psychologists evaluated them and noted strange behavior. One child growled and attempted to choke a medical professional, but no clear diagnosis was made. No signs of abuse, only fear. Latoya herself was evaluated. She passed every mental test. No psychosis, no delusions, just a terrified mother trying to survive something no one could explain. The story broke publicly in 2014, when the Indianapolis Star released hundreds of pages of official documents, police reports, psych evaluations, photos, audio files. The world took notice. Skeptics dismissed it as mass hysteria, an elaborate hoax, but others looked at the evidence and couldn't look away. Why would seasoned officers risk their reputations by confirming the story? Why would a social worker testify under oath that she saw a child walk up a wall? Why would a Catholic priest perform 3 sanctioned exorcisms if nothing was there? The audio from the 911 call still exists. In the background, beneath Latoya's frantic voice, are sounds that don't belong, breathing, crying, but not human, deep, wet, like something inhaling in long, rattling pulls. There's a moment barely audible where a whisper cuts through the static. A single word. Not English, not Latin. Something older. No one's been able to identify it. The house was eventually sold. The new owner, Zach Bagans, a paranormal investigator and host of Ghost Adventures, bought the home in 2014. He reported activity as soon as he moved in. Cold spots, shadows, disembodied voices. Eventually, he demolished the house, burned the remnants. He called it the most terrifying location he'd ever encountered. Today, the lot in Gary, Indiana, is empty. Nothing grows, just bare earth where a small house once stood. No one builds there. Locals don't walk by at night. Some say the ground is cursed. Others say whatever lived in that house never left. It just went quiet, waiting. This story is more than a haunting. It's more than a possession case. It's a chilling example of something we can't measure, can't explain. A moment where reality bent and the darkness looked back. Something is in my house. Please send someone. Latoya Ammons cried out. She wasn't believed at first, but now her story is on record, in government files, in court testimonies, in 911 audio still studied by paranormal researchers. And if you listen closely to that tape, in the heavy breathing and broken sobs, you might hear it to a voice, one that doesn't match any known person, one that doesn't belong to this world, one that shouldn't be there. A voice from the sky. Was it D.B. Cooper? We've been hijacked. He wants money. He's jumping with a parachute. That was the last anyone saw of him, at least officially. November 24th, 1971. A man in a black suit and dark sunglasses boarded Northwest Orient, Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. He was calm, polite. He ordered a bourbon and soda. Then, shortly after takeoff, he handed the flight attendant a note. "I have a bomb," it read. He opened his briefcase just enough to show a tangled mess of red sticks and wires. His demands were simple: $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a fuel truck ready at the Seattle airport. The FBI complied. They had no choice. He let the passengers go. Only the crew remained on board as the plane took off again, this time headed toward Mexico, somewhere over the stormy forests of southwestern Washington. At around 10,000 feet, he opened the rear stairs of the Boeing 727. Then, carrying the money strapped to his body, he jumped into the night, into legend. He was never seen again. No body, no confirmed trace, only scattered clues. A few bundles of decayed cash found years later on the banks of the Columbia River, some torn fabric, a few footprints, and then silence. For decades, the FBI investigated every possible lead. Ex-military men, escaped convicts, career criminals, but nothing stuck. The suspect pool grew colder. Cooper became myth. Books were written, movies made. Some saw him as a villain, others a folk hero, the only man to pull off the perfect heist. But then something strange happened. Decades later, in the early 2000s, a quiet 911 call came into a rural sheriff's department in Washington state. The voice was male, raspy, weathered. He didn't give his name, didn't panic. He simply said, "I'm the man you're still looking for. But I died a long time ago, in the eyes of the world." Then he hung up. That's all. No return number, no traceable ID, just static. The dispatcher tried calling back. Nothing. The call had come from a payphone, one of the few still standing. The location, near a heavily wooded trail not far from the original flight path. Investigators were alerted. They listened to the call, again and again. It was short, barely 10 seconds, but the tone was haunting, tired, almost apologetic. It didn't sound like a prank. It sounded like a man carrying the weight of something heavy, something secret for far too long. The voice was analyzed, compared to old suspects, to FBI profiles, to known recordings. No match was ever confirmed, but one retired agent, who had worked the Cooper case in the 1980s, said this: "I can't say it was him, but if it wasn't, It was someone who knew more than he should have. The theory? Cooper survived the jump. He vanished into the wilderness, lived off-grid for years, changed his name, grew older, and then, near the end of his life, he picked up a phone and made one final call. Not to confess, not to ask forgiveness, just to speak. One last time. Some believe the jump was impossible to survive, that he died that night in the cold woods. Others argue he was trained, ex-military, parachute proficient, and lucky, that he planned it down to the minute and got away. The money found on the riverbank, possibly buried and forgotten, or scattered during the fall. But that voice, that strange call decades later, opened a new chapter. The sheriff's department kept the audio. It was never officially released, but fragments leaked, crackly, grainy, but distinct. You can hear the pause, the breath, the sentence, "I'm the man you're still looking for." Some audio experts say the man sounds elderly, in his 70s, which would line up. If Cooper was in his 40s in 1971, he'd be in his 70s or 80s at the time of the call. Others point out the phrasing, "I died a long time ago." In the eyes of the world, a strange way to say it, as if he'd buried the name, lived under another identity, as if the man he was had ended on that plane, and someone new emerged in the forest. One local theory suggested the caller lived in a remote cabin for years, avoiding cities, people, headlines, that he watched the world move on while he grew older, alone, watching his legend grow. Maybe he wanted to speak before dying, not to be caught, but not to be forgotten. Another theory: the caller wasn't Cooper, but someone who knew him. A friend, a confidant, a dying man protecting a secret one last time. But then again, maybe the voice really was his. Maybe Cooper never wanted to be found. Maybe that final call was a whisper into the void, a soft farewell, a legend reaching out, one last time. Today, the FBI has officially closed the D.B. Cooper case. They say the trail has gone cold, that no more leads remain, but that 911 call remains in unofficial files. A mystery within a mystery. Was it a hoax? A confession? A ghost reaching across decades? Or just wind on the line? No one knows. But if you listen to the audio, really listen, there's something chilling about that voice. The way it pauses, the weight in it, not gloating, not fearful, just final. "I'm the man you're still looking for." A sentence that echoes through time, through static, through shadow. A voice from the sky, calling to say goodbye. Every 911 call is a lifeline, a desperate cry in the darkest moment. A voice hoping someone, anyone, is listening. But the calls you've heard tonight, they don't end with help arriving. They end with silence, with mystery, with cold static echoing down the line. A woman ordering a pizza, masking fear with code. A sun vanishing mid-sentence. A hiker's final breath caught on a desert wind. A mother haunted by forces she couldn't explain. And a voice from decades past, whispering from the shadows of history. These are the calls that stay with you, not because of what they said, but because of what they left unsaid. Somewhere out there, the truth still lingers, buried in evidence, lost in static, waiting to be found. And that's what we do here. Dig through the darkness, listen between the lines, and ask the questions others are afraid to ask. If these stories made your skin crawl, If you felt a chill at that final word, then you're in the right place. This is Dark Truths, where every mystery has a voice, and every voice has a secret. Hit subscribe to join the search. Leave a like if this episode kept you on edge, and drop a comment. Which 911 call haunted you the most? There are more voices waiting to be heard, more lines ringing into the night. We'll be here to answer. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never ignore a whisper in the dark.